Well, I have to say it holds up.
Tell me what your first memory, so I'm being the moderator, of this project is. Your first memory of the first time you heard about the possibility of doing this.
Well, my first memory, because
Well, you don't have to
they
repeat
always
the
do,
thing
well,
I
they
just
tell
said,
you
your first memory. You don't have to repeat.
they always tell you to please answer the
okay.
question.
That's for radio.
With the question.
Okay.
It was the phone call that you made to me, because I was in Toronto, and I get a phone call from Chris. Now, I didn't actually know you, although we worked on a couple of things together. We worked on the Marty Short special that I was directing. I wasn't in it, but and you were doing a scene with Marty, and then there was maybe another thing in the mid-'80s. But I was a fan of this man since I first heard him on the National Lampoon records back in the early 70s, and it was just like, who is he? Who is this guy? And I became a fan because his work was hysterical on SNL and Spinal Tap and la-di-da. So I get the call in 1996 from Chris saying, I'm working on a movie, I'm working on something. I was wondering if you'd like to work on it with me. And I was kind of excited and really nervous because I actually, didn't know him, and you didn't have an overtly kind of social persona at the time. I would say you kind of you made people nervous. And so I said, and you said, yeah, I've got a lovely little cabin up in the woods, and we could work on the script. And I thought, okay, well, let's just do it. I still didn't know why you called me, and it wasn't until years later, quite the truth, that I found out why he called me, because I always thought, since he didn't know me, that he must have called 2, 3, 4 other writers that he knew, and for some reason they couldn't do it, and maybe somebody suggested, why don't you call Eugene Levy? And I didn't actually find out till years later when I asked you, why did you call me 10 years ago?
That's all true, oddly. I had been a fan of Eugene's from SCTV and everything. Amazing amount of funny work. I don't find all that many things funny, it turns out. And he made me laugh like really nobody else did. And I thought, as I had an idea to do this story, I had this idea, and I'll go back in time. Well, everything's back in time at this point. I was a friend of mine, Rob Reiner. We had done this movie called Spinal Tap together, and in the way that this worked was that we were trying to get that movie made, and Norman Lear said to Rob Reiner, because no one wanted to make that movie. They just said, "This is a crap idea. Who are these people? What are you talking about?" And Norman said, "Just here, go and make the movie." Essentially, after us trying, Karen Murphy was producing that movie, and it wasn't happening. Eventually, it did. When Rob started a company, he said to me, "Do you have any ideas to make a movie? You can make a movie." And I said, "Well, I actually do have an idea," and I told him about this idea, and he said, "Well, then just make the movie." And it was kind of this handed down patronage, I guess, in a way. And I thought of Eugene first. I thought, who this person who makes me laugh more than anyone. And I did call, and fortunately, we went up to the woods and wrote in this cabin. And it was a great it really worked out well. I mean, I had fun. You didn't smile all that much during the process, but it and you were the only one I called. You weren't on a list of any kind, but I think we made each other laugh in person then, I believe.
We actually hit it off on the first day on the trip back in from the airport. Actually, when I flew up there, it was quite lovely. It was a great experience, and boy, a lot of laughs putting this thing together. And I have to say, I broke up quite a few times when we were filming this, and I kind of learned that, you know, in these kind of movies, these improvisational movies, it's not really a great thing to do, you know, to kind of laugh in the middle of a scene because you think something is funny, because, you know, you won't really, it's hard to recreate in an improvisational setting what made you laugh in the first place. So if you kill a take by laughing, but I did in this one because I didn't know any better. And it was first of all, the character that just drove me crazy. It was just so hysterical. One of the great characters ever created for the silver screen. But it was that dance move that drove me crazy, and I couldn't stop laughing. And there's one scene, it's actually a short scene in the movie, where you were teaching the group of us that dance move in the car dealership, and I started laughing, and I just couldn't stop laughing, so I worked my way behind the crowd, the cast.
That'd be a good idea.
And got to a point where I got down on all hands and fours and crawled off the set.
Yeah. Well,
so that I wouldn't kill
that
the
actually
take.
happened to you one other time. Fred Willard, the great Fred Willard.
Yeah.
The most amazing talent. Whenever Fred would start on what he was doing, and no one knew what he was going to say, because nobody knew what anyone was going to say. You knew exactly what happened within a scene, but no one knew the dialogue that was going to be spoken. And we were doing something. Fred started in on what Fred would do. Eugene walked out of the movie. He just left the set. We were in the library rehearsing.
Yeah.
So it's nice being around...
professionals?
Yeah. You see this happen in other movies, like Mission Impossible occasionally, where you know, you're running down the street and the guy's got the Glock and the thing, and then you just see him break up, and you're thinking, that's weird. I wonder why would he be doing that? And then it's kind of, because it's supposed to be scary, I think. It happens in more movies than you think, is what I'm trying to say.
And the other thing I didn't know was kind of how these things were done, because I wasn't in Spinal Tap.
Right.
I wish I was, but I wasn't in it, so I didn't know how the process worked on the set for these improvisational movies. And my first scene in this movie, the first day, I was shooting the last scene in the movie. I was shooting the old folks' home, where I kind of do my final number, and that was the first thing I was shooting. And I went up to Chris and I said, So where do you want to work it out? Like, he said, what do you mean? I said, where do you want to, kind of rehearse it? Where should we work it out? He said, what do you mean? To rehearse it. Where do you want to rehearse it? He said, well, no, the cameras are there, and that's where you're working it out. And I went, there's no rehearsal for this. No rehearsal. And I went,
well, it's a strange concept to explain, and over the years I've failed at trying to do that. But basically, if you can imagine playing music, if you in jazz, there's a melody. It's in a key. It's whatever key in G. Everyone knows the story, which is the melody, and then when someone starts to play, you can go off of that and you come back to the thing. And in a scene, you know the intention of the scene. There are no rehearsals, and to explain that to people is difficult because how would that work? In the same way, how would the musician know what to play? There are no notes written down here, but you do know, and ultimately you do it. I see that a lot of people are raising their hands. I meant no one is raising their hands. The most fun about it is the Q&A part of this for me. No, I'm serious because I don't know. The moderator thing. That's my fault. They said, "Is there a moderator you'd like to work with?" And I said, "Well, not really, but if Gene would be great because he's funny." And but you can see how that worked out. So I think
that's what I found out.
Yeah. No, it's true. I'll be a better moderator now. No, I won't. I won't.
And what a great cast. I have to say though, it's a very, and you guys did experience this, I guess, in Spinal Tap, which is the idea of an improvisational movie, but it's not like just let's see how wild we can get. Let's just see how funny we can be. You do. It's that fine art of course trying to be funny, but also moving the story, and also being credible and being somewhat believable, and allowing the audience to have some kind of emotional involvement with the characters. So it's.
I think what I learned, it was different than Spinal Tap. When Gene and we did several films together. We did Best in Show together, and we did other Mighty Wind, and it's. You start to make out cards for the different scenes, and it becomes this thing with 120 cards. It's this very deliberative thing that takes 6 or 8 months to do, and Gene has an incredible mind for that, and it was helpful for me. We would make each other laugh in the office a lot, but to have that structure is the utmost importance. It's not just this, let's see what happens and let's try to be funny. And I think at one point we were doing, I can't remember which film it was on, we actually color-coded these cards because as we were looking at this up on this office wall, we thought, there's something here that we need to address, and I don't remember which one of us realized what it was, but it was, there's too much time here when Fred Willard doesn't show up. And the value of that, the unbelievable lift that created in seeing him when he'd come on screen and the audience sort of sits up and he does what he does. And we would look at the script with that in mind and change a scene around and move him into a scene if he hadn't been seen for 15 minutes or whatever it was. And I learned a lot from Eugene because he's more organized, I think, than I am. But it's incredibly important to make each other laugh because otherwise, then it would be, why are we here?
Well, when we were to add to that, when you came up and said, I have an idea for our next movie. It's a dog show. And I said, wow, well, that sounds interesting. That sounds really good. That sounds really good. So we kind of work our way up to a dog show. So that's the third act, is the dog show, but how do we make a dog show funny? Yeah. I mean, we can't make it funny because it has to be credible. So,
that was
what are
a
we
hard.
gonna
That
do
was
with
a
the
harder
third act?
sell. I mean, I could tell that, and it would seem that, you know. I mean, to me, I was actually walking my dog in this actual area, and there was this rescue dog, and this woman who had a fancy dog of some sort was next to me, and she said, it was really chilling. She said, "What is that?" I said, "Well, he's a mix of," and she looked at me as, "You poor man. You know, I'm so sorry for you that you couldn't have this purebred dog." And I thought, that's so strange. What is that? We had this sweet dog, and I thought about that, and it really was the impetus to do something about these other kinds of dogs and how people look at their dogs and what that says about people more. And as if you've seen the movie, it's all about the people, obviously, but they kind of mirror this craziness about their dogs. But it was I could tell from your response when I mentioned the idea that it was definitely not. It wasn't, oh yeah, great, let's go. It was definitely a sell.
No, but just to continue my story.
I have to make some calls anyway.
But that certainly was kind of the filled in the understanding of why we had to do the dog show. But it was still, how do we make that third act funny? Because, you know, in Guffman, we wrote Red, White, and Blaine, so we could make that funny as the third act show. And so we left it. We didn't do it, right? We went on and worked on something else, and then probably a year or so later, you came back and said, what about that dog show idea? And I said, yeah, but Chris, you know, I still don't know how we make it funny. I don't know what to do with the third act. And then Chris said, well, what if Fred Willard is the color commentator on the broadcast? And that was the key. Immediately opened that third act right up. You could do your dog show, keep it as straight as you want to, you know, keep it, and Fred would provide the humor, which he did. He was quite a genius, Fred Willard. We had, I see a hand.
I'm curious about, you said Fred Willard, but the characters, how much did you write the characters?
Oh, yes. We write an entire back history for all the characters, very deep, much more than, if you get a conventional script, it might say lawyer 30s. Ah, yes. And if you're an actor, you, in a conventional movie, you would talk to the director, and you may never even get to that point where he says, well, you went to school at so-and-so. But these have to be pretty deep because there's no dialogue written. So that is very structured in terms of what their life has been and how they can interact with other people. And all the other actors know their own, obviously, but also other people's. It's not a script, but the outline may have been, what, 20-something pages or something?
Guffman actually was the shortest. It was maybe 18. It was maybe 18 pages
Well,
or 20 pages.
But
And
what
then,
it does have this character information as a separate thing. Yeah.
But the stories are worked out scene by scene, and what is important in the outline is what information has to come out to keep the story moving, because if there was no outline and it was just pure improvisation, as a kind of free for all, it might take 9 years to edit.
And for me, sitting in an editing room, a lot of funny stuff had to go to service the story and how it was moved along, and that continues to be, if you were to work in a situation like this, it continues to be the way you have to do it, I think. I bet you have another question. The same person, or oh?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. This gentleman had his hand up too before, and then we'll get right to you.
Well, that was different than anything else, because she was doing something that was supposed to be written. It's not supposed to be improvised, even in the premise of her doing something as if it were an acting scene. I don't know if you've seen it. It's her doing this crazy monologue. You can see it on YouTube. And Parker was in New York. I think I was out here, and she said, "I have an idea for that scene. Can I send you?" And then it was only faxing thing. She faxed me this monologue. I said, "Well, it's incredible." I saw it recently because a friend of mine hadn't seen it, and it's a remarkable thing. And that shows that the way you make these movies is different than other things. But in that case, it was supposed to be a written thing, but she actually did that. Yeah. Oh, you actually want an answer to that? How do you handle casting? Well, this is also hard to explain because there's nothing to read for me if you come in to meet me. I would talk to people for 25 or 30 minutes, and I could get a sense from that meeting, just from that meeting. I just would say, I have a feeling that this person can do this. We weren't doing a scene, we weren't doing anything, we were just talking. And that's really all it was. And still is, if I kept doing this, yeah.
And I think we did go to some like improv clubs.
Yes, to see people that would ultimately come in. Yes, stage improv is an entirely different thing because, as Eugene knows from Second City, this is a different thing because it's supposed to be real as opposed to a piece that's worked out and maybe you repeat it on certain nights and you have certain jokes. It is a different thing, and it's not supposed to be broad in the same way. It's a different art form, essentially. Well, we talked about different places. We wanted to have a place almost exactly in the middle of the country. I remember we looked on a map, and really we looked on and said, this is about as close as it is, and we made up the name of the place so we wouldn't go to prison. And the idea that it was far away from New York or Hollywood, it was, I had done summer theater in a small town with, oddly enough, some of the similar people. So all these things come from your past. If you're writing something, it unconsciously comes. In this case, there were several people that fit this bill fairly closely. And it was a small town, maybe a few hundred people, this town, where they had this little theater. And it seemed like a good idea, as opposed to...
It was a good idea. Well, yeah, small-time theater, small-time theater, amateur theater is just a ripe setting.
Well, there
is kind of a "don't you know who I think I am" kind of thing.
Yeah.
That goes on in every company.
That's an important thing because it's all relative. If you're doing a show and you live in a small town and you're the star of that show, the way Fred Willard and Catherine call them, they think they're a really big deal, and they are in the town. It's not any different than someone on Broadway in a funny way because it's just a relative sort of difference. But it seemed to be the right idea, I guess. It's too late now, anyway. Well, you first explain to the people what SNL is. They may not know. what the acronym. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, it's a late night show. That yeah.
No, I think they know what SNL is, but I think the
Oh,
I think the actual story is an interesting story.
very. Which story was?
The story of that character,
Oh, yeah.
Antoninus de Mentabella.
Oh yeah. No, it was Chip. Wasn't his name Chip de Mentabella?
Oh, Chip de Mentabella.
It was Chip de Mentabella.
Who was Antoninus de Mentabella?
You're thinking of a different movie. That's
No.
There was a movie called Spartacus, which was
Nope,
about.
nope, not what I'm thinking of. That's not what I'm
Well,
thinking
that's
of.
Antoninus. That
Okay,
guy-
Chip de Mentabella. Antoninus de Mentabella was in the Marty special. Was
Okay.
that the name of your critic?
I don't know.
Don't know, don't remember.
Don't remember.
But I think you said you went to Lorne Michaels.
Lauren
when
wasn't
you-
there.
No,
Lauren
no,
was
no. Let me finish. Let me finish what I'm saying. That you had told me you went to Lorne Michaels to say you're doing this movie and you want to use this character.
Yeah.
And can you use the characters?
Right.
Can you use the name? And he said, no, we own the character.
Well, the only problem with that story was that Lauren wasn't working on SNL at the time. So when I was there, he wasn't there. He hadn't been there for a few years. But otherwise, it's right on. It's actually on. And it's a chilling kind of reminder for all of you that. Wait a
Oh,
minute.
you did the 1 year where Lauren was not on the show.
Well,
actually, there was
he
about 5 years.
It was 5
Yeah,
years
yeah.
that he wasn't there, and
All right.
I did it with Martin Short and Harry Shearer and Billy Crystal for 1 year. We signed 1 year contracts. We did that thing, so it was a different thing. I don't remember
The
real-
short answer is it was SNL that said no.
It may have been SNL,
Yeah.
the NBC.
So you
thing.
changed the name
So
to
I changed
now
the name
Corky.
to a different name. Yes.
Yes.
And in Spartacus, they changed the name. In Spartacus.
Would that we had the time.
Yes, sir. No. I made one decision I made. We had done Spinal Tap where it was one camera. This was actually one camera as well. Roberto Schaefer was the DP of this film. And it's hard to, I wanted to separate this. You don't hear questions being asked. And so imagine if you're on the set, you just started talking. There was no, I'm not there saying to any of these people in their interviews when Dr. Pearl is in his office, action. There is no when did you start or how did you think. So that was a big difference. And in Spinal Tap, you heard there was actually a character who was the filmmaker, apparently, who did that and asked the questions. So this was different. But there was not. It's not intended that they see you. They make any connection with that. Well, I would look at the script and I have a sense of how long each thing would take, and it's for an AD. It's hard because normally you have a page count, and they can do it that way. But this was, I would look at a given scene and I would say, I know this is going to take 20 minutes or 15 minutes to do, and that's how the day was built. There's a story. We were doing a movie called For Your Consideration with Fred Willard. There was a scene. Fred was we used to shoot as a Super 16, and then eventually, well, it was always 16. And there were 10-minute mags in those days, and still are. And we got to the end, and I said, cut. And Fred said, I'm not finished. And he wasn't finished. He could have gone on for a long time. But I was the one that had to say, okay, now we have this, and now we move on. That was my... Slippery.
Well, thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll take a few more.
Well, we just wrapped 4 days ago on the Spinal Tap film. Which, yeah, that was a separate thing, apparently. No, I don't think, we have never talked about doing another version of this. No.
No.
No, I mean, this is a
No, I
fond
think it's
memory. But
yeah. I think it's. I mean, it's a nice thought. But I think we've kind of told the story.
I think we did, yeah. Uh-oh.
But-
Well, maybe a couple more, and then we should. I think they have another thing coming in here
And
or something.
that will be it. Yes. How each other has changed.
How have we changed over the years?
Well, I don't know. You've become a pretty good golfer.
I think it's hard to say if you know someone. I think with people who do comedy, it sounds simplistic, but I think if you share a sensibility, it just kind of keeps going. It doesn't kind of change, and that keeps it the same, I guess. So Eugene has obviously done unbelievable stuff in the last few years, and we don't socialize lately that much, actually, but I was looking forward to seeing him here, and I couldn't really say. He keeps doing what he's doing. He's still one of the funniest people in the world, and that's a good thing. That's definitely a good thing. I don't know. I'm trying to remember that sequence. It's taken over by Mike Hitchcock pretty much as a tour de force.
I would hazard a guess that they were, to some degree, directed. Certainly, the principal actors that were in the crowd knew
Yes.
what they had to do.
I think I was probably describing each thing. It's sad that I wouldn't remember that. I do remember in Best in Show that for Fred's and Jim Pittick's piece, we had people running around holding these sort of balloon-like things to emulate where the dogs would be, and they were looking at them running, because you couldn't just have dogs running around, and they would run and talk about these things, and then obviously you'd cut to the thing we'd shot before. But in this thing, I think we just said this is what this is, and something like that. I don't know. Too specific, you think? I don't know. Thank you for coming. It's lovely. Love it. Eugene Levy.
Thank you all.